Hi everyone, Logan here again. Welcome back to another video. One thing about all the nebulae that are in our galaxy is that they have really interesting names, and for some of them it's quite obvious how they got their name from their appearance, and from others, not so much. But one thing I've noticed is that the Milky Way is kind of like one giant seafood chowder. There are lots and lots of nebulae named after seafood. I did one not so long ago, the Lobster Nebula. Admittedly, a lot of them are more Northern Hemisphere targets, such as the Jellyfish Nebula, the Squid, the Lobster Claw Nebula, the Fish Head Nebula. And I thought, why not add to my seafood cocktail and image the Prawn Nebula. Okay, so looking in Stellarium, we're facing sort of east or northeast, and this is where the Prawn Nebula is located. We're not a long way away from the moon, unfortunately, and it's pretty bright, as you can see. A lot of it is illuminated, so I'm just going to concentrate on HA tonight. Now, the Prawn Nebula is located near, well, not too far away from a couple of other well-known targets, the Cat's Paw Nebula and the other piece of seafood that I recently imaged, and that's the Lobster Nebula. If we turn on the constellations, you can see that it is in Scorpius. It's sort of around the tail of Scorpius. Now, the Prawn Nebula, it's about 6,000 light years from Earth and about 250 light years across. And it contains a large number of very hot luminous young stars which are producing the radiation and causing the nebula to glow, as is the case with a lot of nebulae. I'm hoping, because it might be relatively bright, that I can get away with the 5-minute exposures, but we'll see about that. And then I've just got to make sure that my framing is correct. So if I just turn this on here, this is with the ASI 2600mm Pro and my Skywatcher Esprit 120, and it looks like I should be able to get most of it in the frame. I think there's some extra nebulosity around here which may or may not make it in. The other thing I've got to check when I get into Nina and also take my first image is to make sure that this is the way it's oriented and it's not sort of along this way, because I might be missing out on some of the nebula. So we'll get Nina started and take some first images. So we're in Nina now. This is an HA filter is taking its first few images, and there's a good bit of nebulosity there. This was the framing that I wanted and that I put into Nina, but when I took my first few images, this was the framing I got, and that is because of the orientation of the telescope and the camera and filter wheel. So that was no good. Had to throw away some of those first few images because I wanted all this nice nebulosity around it. I think because I've had to adjust my filter wheel and everything, it has affected my guiding a bit. It's normally better than this, but it's still acceptable, and I'm still getting round stars, so I'm not complaining too much about that. This is a view of the telescope, and over here there's a glow, and that is the moon. So I'm sort of shooting straight up here, and it's not that far away from this very bright moon over here. Now you can see my filter wheel is orientated sideways, and I think because of the way the weight is and its orientation that it is actually throwing things out a little bit, so the guiding is not quite as good as it could be. But as I said, I'm getting away with it, and the stars are around, and I think it's still within acceptable limits. I'm also running the live stack in Pixinsight just to see how the data is shaping up, and I'm actually pretty pleased with what I can see at the moment. And this is just, I think, 5 or 6 subs, because as I said, some of the first ones I had to throw away. The weather, can it be trusted? Don't know. This is volcanic cloud monitoring, and no, I'm not looking for volcanoes. I'm just checking what the clouds are doing, because it shows that as well, and we're in that little gap. So I will keep imaging as long as we stay in that little gap. Okay, so I've got Pixinsight up here. I'm not going to run through, like, do a step-by-step processing because that would run for a very long time, and I'm somewhat chaotic in my processing anyway. I actually processed this image multiple times, but just quickly to run through it. This was the HA data, which I was actually really pleased with, and it was nice and clean and fairly noise-free. I mean, I have denoised this. I have done a stretch and a dynamic background extraction. Same with the S2, there was some nice detail here. It was a little more noisy, but that's to be expected. The OIII didn't have a huge amount, and I actually did a range mask to pull this OIII information out, make it a lot stronger so it would have much more of an impact in the final image. Also pulled the stars back a little bit, and I know this looks very black in the background. I didn't actually use this one. Unfortunately, I deleted the one I used, but I did not quite make this so black, because when I combined it with the S2 and HA initially like this, it came out looking a little wacky. But anyway, I then just used the LRGB combination tool, not using the luminance, but put S2 to red, HA to green, and OIII to blue, as is commonly done with a Hubble type palette. And I ended up with, if we just whip this back here, with this, your usual very green looking image applied in SCNR, not 100%, but about 80% or so. And there were some magenta stars here, so I used the fixed magenta stars script, I think, on this one. Correct magenta stars there. Or the other thing you can do is just invert the image and then apply a D green, because the purple goes to green, and then convert it back again. I then remove the stars. So this is slightly different version to the one I just showed you, but I removed the stars and started working on the curves, etc., to bring out the color. I actually used the, if we go under here, script utilities, and we have a look at the color mask tool. Now I'm going to have to bring something up here because that will object. So script utilities, color mask, and this is where you can tell it to pick out the, the yellow or the blue or whatever, and then you can start to work on those areas separately, because it produces a nice mask. So for example, here was the blue mask I used, and this is, for example, the yellow mask here. Now the luminance, as I said, that was just the HA that I used for the luminance, and I did a starless version, applied some HDR multi-scale transform to it, and also some local histogram equalization, amongst other things, so that I got myself a reasonably sharp looking image here for a luminance. And then it was just a matter of using the LRGB combination tool again to add the luminance data to the color data. So now if I just reset that, so it was a matter of pulling up the color, and you tick off the RGB, and where we got this, the luminance, and you put that into there, and then I'll show you the imagine this has actually been processed further, but anyway, you just apply the luminance to your more processed RGB data. Now you do need to play around with these sliders here, the lightness and the saturation, because I find that where the default is set doesn't look very good with, well, at least when I'm processing it. So I do tend to have to slide the lightness slider down to around about sort of 400 to 450, and often I'm bringing the saturation slider up here to about sort of 550, 600, but I play around with a lot depending on the image I'm doing, and click the chrominance noise reduction. And what I ended up with was something similar to this. So now you can see much richer color and a lot more sharp, crisp detail to the nebula. I did apply the more of the color mask to this to the point where I got to here to actually bring out some more colours and get a bit of more variation in the colour of the nebula, and put back the stars, this is basically a star mask that was taken out when I did my original starless version of the colour image, and worked on that a little bit, did some star reduction, and ended up with the following final image.